Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Bee's House of Plants, where I talk about things houseplant and home design. Welcome back! So today I'm going to be doing a flush day for all of my LECA plants, and I also asked you guys on Instagram any questions you have for me about LECA or passive hydro, so I'll be trying to answer those while I do this as well. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so if you don't know what LECA is, I'll be making more of like a beginner's guides video later on, but at the moment I have a whole playlist, I'll link it right here for you, about LECA plants. I also talk about what LECA is and how it works in my repotting video, so go check out that video in the meantime. So today we're just going to be talking about flushing. Okay, so I'm going to be trying a new product out today. This is Fox Farm's Bush Doctor Sledge Hammer. This is a product that was made specifically to flush plants. It's a nutrient rinse, which means that it was designed to help flush out all the excess mineral and all of the salt buildup in your plants. You can use this on soil plants, you can use it on hydroponics plants. I've never used this before, obviously, so this is not a recommendation at this point because I've never used it. But I'm really hopeful that this will be great because I want to try to experiment and start using tap water with my LECA plants. Okay, stop. Okay, this is not a recommendation for you to also use tap water with your LECA plants. So the reason that most people will tell you that you have to use either filtered water or some other kind of like distilled water or something like that with your hydroponics plants is that because this is a soilless medium. When you have a plant in potting soil, especially if you add in soil amendments like orchid bark or charcoal, those ingredients or things help kind of like absorb all of the excess minerals and all the excess salts that otherwise your plant roots would be exposed to. Obviously, because this is a soilless medium, that doesn't happen with hydroponics plants or LECA plants, so they are much more sensitive to buildup of minerals and salt buildup. However, I was looking up kind of like the tap water in my county where I live, and so far, to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look like there's too much sodium, which is kind of like a thing that you really need to look out for. Also doesn't look like there's an excess of chlorine, which is the other kind of like chemical that plants are really sensitive to. Obviously, I don't know yet because I don't, know everything. I'm very new to this. I've only been doing this for about 4 or 5 months. So this is me experimenting. I'm not telling you to do it. This is me risking my own plants. Okay, with that out of the way. So that is what I would eventually love to do, just because I do have quite a few plants in LECA at this point, and eventually I hope to transfer most of my collection into LECA, and it is such a pain in the butt to use only filtered water. So because obviously I would have to go out and buy the filtered water, and with this many plants already, every time I fill the reservoir, I'm already using almost 2 gallons of water. So, like if I buy one of those like big ass 5-gallon jugs that I bring home, like that only lasts me at this point 2 waterings, like 2 refills. So it's heavy. I don't really want to do it. It would make my life so much easier if I could use tap water. Obviously, if this all turns terrible and all of my plants die, or I get a lot of browning and a lot of crispy edges, then obviously I'll stop and I'll go back to using filtered water. But that's kind of what I want to start experimenting with. Okay, so the other question I should answer off the bat is obviously what is flushing and what does this do? This is also, by the way, something that you should do with your soil plants. This is also helpful for soil plants. So basically, if you look at the top of this plant, right, this is my Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, you can see that there's some kind of like white film that's kind of like on top, that is excess salt buildup. If you have plants in terracotta, even if they're soil plants, I mean, obviously there'll be soil plants in terracotta. You can also see if they get like that white thing around your terracotta, that's also excess mineral buildup and excess salt buildup. That's not good for your plants, because when there's too much minerals and too much salt, your plant can't absorb actual nutrients, right? So we want to get rid of that. And how we do that is we run a lot of running water through it. I just put it, you know, in the sink, obviously under running water, and I just let it run all the way through. So if you see here, like this one has like a huge moss pole, because I also want to get the moss pole all the way wet. For these big ones, I bring it into my shower and I do it in there. But for these baby ones, I usually just do it over my sink. Also, during flush days is when I change out completely the water in the containers. So I usually do flush days once a month. I might start doing them once every 2 weeks. We'll see, but usually I do them once a month, and I can replace the water completely with new nutrients water. The other 3 weeks of the month, I simply top it up with, up until now, filtered water. So up to the 1/3 line. So yeah, so like the other 3 weeks that are not flush weeks, there's no nutrients at all in the water. Okay. I'm gonna start doing some of this.
She was living in summer, flowers in her hair. No one ever loved her.
I also had someone ask me once why I use tap water to flush my plants when tap water has a lot of minerals in it and a lot of salt. Think of it kind of like pressure washing, right? Where like technically with pressure washing, you're just spraying it down with, you know, the regular hose water that you could use with a hose, but the difference is how fast the water is running through and how much water you're using. It's really just about like how much volume of water is going through all of the medium and like pulling down all of the salts and all the minerals. I don't know if that's really a great analogy because I don't really know how pressure washing works, but I think that kind of explains it. Okay, so another question I get quite often is what types of plants do the best in LECA? I don't really have like a concrete answer for that. So basically, I've never really had a plant like really suffer going through the transition process. I feel like with a general rule, it would be easiest for plants with really thick roots because those plants I feel like acclimatize quicker. So all Syngoniums do really well in LECA. I transferred my Syngonium albo into LECA. I transferred a lot of my philodendrons into LECA. I have, this is a philodendron burgundy princess, or basically a philodendron pink princess, and it does fine. I don't have a monstera in LECA, but I've seen a lot of other people transfer their monsteras from soil to LECA, and they do really well, so I feel like that would do well as well. I also have more delicate plants in LECA. So this is a Chendescantia, which has very fine roots, and it's been in LECA for about a month, and I think it's looking really, really good. So I don't, you know, it didn't really have any problems transferring. If you're worried about a plant, I would say that the hardest part isn't necessarily the medium itself. The hardest part is that when you are transferring a plant from soil to LECA, the roots that that plant has are their soil roots, and soil roots are different from water roots, and they're different from like aerial roots. And the roots that plants develop in LECA look different than the roots that they develop when they're in soil. So you just really have to get the roots like extremely clean when you're in that transferring process. Also, if you kind of just like don't want to deal with transferring your plants, another really, really good option is to take cuttings and then water propagate, and then transfer that water propagation into LECA. So basically when you're water propagating, you're creating brand new roots that have never touched soil. So you're kind of eliminating the transferring process, because that's usually where plants suffer the most. For example, I have my Maranta plant. It has some crispy edges right now because I put it in a new container, and I didn't fill the container up with enough water, so it dried out. Anyways, so this Maranta is doing very, very well in LECA, and usually I feel like not a lot of people transfer the Marantas into LECA. I didn't transfer this one. I took a cutting from my Maranta, and then I water propagated it, and then I transferred it into LECA, and it was perfectly fine. I have to definitely cut off some of these crispy edges. I also need to find a new container for this Maranta, because the container I have it in right now is too big. So the water levels are getting too low in it.
A few minutes later.
Okay, so I just finished flushing through all of my plants. The bigger ones are in the shower behind me. So now I have a gallon container. Obviously make sure you label all of your containers, especially if they used to be food containers. And then I'm opening up the Sledge Hammer. So this is a brand new syringe. It's never been used before, obviously without the needle. And I use a brand new syringe for every different kind of like chemically bottle. Don't mix the syringes, and once I'm done, I just tie the syringe to the bottle like so. I got this trick from Minimalist Callie. It's a great trick. Okay, well, if I can get this bottle open. Okay, so this is 2.5 milliliters of the Sledgehammer per, according to the instructions on the back. It's going in 1 gallon of water. That shit is dark. Mix. Okay, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to fill all of these containers up pretty much like all the way. Like so. And then I'm going to leave all of my plants like this for 1 hour.
2 hours later.
Okay, I'm back. It's actually been about 2 hours because we had dinner. So yeah, okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dump out all the water that's in here, run everything under the tap one more time, and then I'm going to refill it with the nutrient-rich water. Okay, so I'm just gonna dump this out. Alright, now we are ready for some nutrient water. There we go. So another question I got is how to prevent mineral buildup. Personally, Personally, I feel like, well, one, it depends on what kind of water you use, but also you don't necessarily want to use like soft water, like water that has like absolutely nothing at all, because you want some nutrients within the water that you're giving your plants. You just don't want too much. It's very complicated. But another way obviously is if you just flush often. The longer you go in between, obviously, you know, the worse the mineral buildup gets. So before I was doing flushes once a month, maybe you can do flushes every other week. But if you are flushing every other week, I would also lower the amount of nutrients that is in your solution. And I would do that because you can over-fertilize your plants. That is definitely a thing. If you give your plants too much fertilizer, first, it can burn the roots. So that's obviously not good. You don't want to hurt your roots that way. And second, it can cause nutrient lockout, which is when there's too much, so then the plant can't properly absorb all of the nutrients. So if you're going to flush every other week, which means that you're going to give completely new nutrients every other week, then I would probably start at half of, so like when I started giving my plants nutrients, like when I first was converting a lot of plants, I was starting with a quarter of the dose from the bottle, and then I slowly progressed to half the dose recommended on the bottle. Now I'm doing the full dose recommended on the bottle, and I also did 1 nutrients at a time. So like, so there's 3 bottles in the entire series, and I started incorporating those one at a time and not all at once, because I feel like I should work up my plants to this nutrients. So yeah. Okay, and then someone else asked if I'm terrified that my plants aren't going to take well to the LECA and just die. Yes, but also I feel like I just really liked this medium. Obviously I started with plants that are like more common. I started with the syngoniums, and I started with like the philodendron, you know, like silver stripe or green splash, whatever this philodendron is, that I know will like be easily replaceable if, you know, everything went wrong. So now I'm more confident in, you know, using LECA. Also, like the much more expensive plants, like my philodendron splendid, that was sold to me in LECA. So that was like the one that really helped me get over the fear of whether or not my plants are going to take well to LECA, because I didn't transfer that one, and it came to me already acclimated to LECA. So now I'm definitely much more comfortable using LECA, and I pretty much I'm willing to transfer everything into LECA, just because I've been using it for I think like 4 or 5 months now, and pretty much every single plant that's in LECA is doing fantastic. So yeah. Also, if you try LECA and you hate it, you can always go back. You can always transfer your plant like back into soil. You know, it's always an option. This is my Miney. Look at that new leaf. It's so cute. This was a moss propagation that I transferred into LECA. So, you know, like basically the moral story is if you avoid plants that were ever in soil, you know, obviously the transferring process is much smoother that way. This one was in soil, but it took no problems at all. That's an agonema. Okay, all the water has been dumped, so now I'm going to start to mix up my new nutrients. So I use the Fox Farm series. There's 3 of them in the series. I have worked up to it like I mentioned before, so now I use all 3 of them. So this one is actually the one that's formulated for soil. When I bought these, they didn't have one that was specific for hydroponics plants yet, but they have since released a new formula for their grow big liquid plant food that's specifically made for hydroponics. So if you haven't bought one yet, obviously you should buy the one that's made for hydroponics. But I've been using this one for a while now, and my plants seem fine, so I'm gonna just keep on using this until I run out of the bottle. The one made for hydroponics, it does have a different NPK value, and I think it has a lower NPK value. So I think that means it's a little bit less like strong. Okay, now I'm gonna put in Big Bloom. So I put in 10 mils of the Grow Big. Now I'm going to put in 10 or 15 mils of this Liquid Bloom. You can put way more. The instructions on the back actually tell you to put way more, but I'm gonna be honest that I don't, because the color of this one is super ugly and it's really brown, and I don't want my plants, because a lot of my containers are clear, so it looks like really dirty water if I put in that much. And then now I'm gonna put in buds and bloom. I'm gonna put in 10 millimeters of this one as well. I found it. At this point now, I have enough plants where I need to actually mix up 2 gallons. So I'll have to do this one more time after this until I get a new container. The mixture, I have my pH indicator liquid. 1, 2, 3, 4. About 4 to 5 drops in there. And then shake. So this is about, I would say, 5 on the color scale, and you want it at around a 6 to a 6.5. So I have to add pH up. Okay, that was 34 drops actually. And then we'll shake it up again. There we go. It's about between a 6 and a 6.5 to me. Now we gotta go fill up all the plants, and you want it to be filled up to about right there, about the 1/3 line. And ideally, obviously, you would want all of your roots to be above that line. This plant has been in LECA for a while, so the roots have grown down below that, but that's fine because those are new roots. So those roots are acclimated to the amount of water that the plant is sitting in. But especially if this is a plant that you just transferred into LECA and it was previously in soil, you really want to make sure that all your roots are above the water line so you don't end up with root rot. Okay, so let's talk about this poll because I also got a lot of questions at this poll. So this is a Craig Melrin inspired pole. This is how he makes his moss poles, but except for stuffing it with moss, I stuffed it with LECA because I wanted to see if that would be easier for me to keep a pole moist. The answer is that no, I don't recommend you do this. So I don't recommend you do this because one, I just don't think that the LECA is strong enough to wick up water to this height, right? Like it can't wick up that much water. And so the LECA will dry out very, very quickly because this is a small amount of LECA. Also, if you do get aerial roots, because there's so much oxygen, it's very likely that your aerial roots will dry out. Well, that's exactly what happened. So my Splendid created an aerial root right here. And it was starting to dry out, so I ended up just stuffing some sphagnum moss right around that root, and I've been spraying it with a mister bottle, like how you would spray a moss pole. I will probably keep this one on this LECA pole for a while, just because I already made it and it's such a freaking hassle to like switch out the mediums, but I would not recommend that you do it. I don't think it's a good idea. So yeah, also someone asked me how I keep the LECA from coming out. So there's no PVC pipe or anything. It's just the mesh that I've twisted around and then used pliers to attach, like, you know when you cut in between the two squares, how like there's a little bit of extra piece of like wiring left, so I used that just to bend it back onto itself. There's no PVC pipe or anything, but maybe I should try that to see if I can keep it self-watering. The LECA doesn't really fall out unless I'm like moving it from like here to the bathroom, and then usually like either like one or two pieces will fall out, but I don't really think that's a big deal. It's just LECA, so I just pick it up and put it back in. So yeah, don't really recommend you do this. Okay, I'm gonna put some of the same nutrient water in this. I'm about to run out though, so definitely need to mix up some more. So yeah, I think those are all of the questions I received. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments down below, and then maybe I'll do like a part 2 the next time I do a flush day on my LECA plants. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!